Hello, geometers and seekers of general truths. In this lesson, we will work on two additional trigonometric ratios called the sine and cosine ratios. Last lesson, we talked quite a bit about the tangent ratio. The adjacent and the opposite legs was what we use for the tangent ratio. And it turns out there are other ratios or trigonometric ratios that we could also use to our advantage, in particular ratios that involve the hypotenuse. Okay, so I've typed up the definition here, and we have them in front of us. There are some conditions. The triangle ABC has to be a right triangle, and we have to be talking about acute angles. The sine of angle A and the cosine of angle A is written as sine A and cos A, and this is their definition. Sine of angle A is the leg opposite of that angle. So let's use this picture here. The leg that's opposite of angle A is BC, and the hypotenuse is AB. Okay. And then the cosine ratio is the leg adjacent to angle A, which in this case is AC, over the hypotenuse, which is AB. Okay. So these are the two ratios, the sine and cosine ratio, using angle A. But we could also use another acute angle. Okay. As long as the angle is acute, we could use it with these two ratios. So we can also define and say that the sine of B, or the measure of angle, the sine of the measure of angle B, is the leg opposite B. So if we're using B here as our reference, leg opposite of that is AC, and the hypotenuse is still AB. And the cosine of angle B is the leg opposite of that, which is AC. No, I'm sorry, is the leg adjacent. See, I almost got my stuff mixed up there. It is the leg, excuse me, it is the leg adjacent to angle B, which in this case is BC, divided by the hypotenuse, which is AB. All right, so now we'll look at some examples a little bit later with some actual numbers. But this, as we have here, are examples using the definition of the sine and cosine ratios. Now, in future problems, we'll be focused and worried a lot on which ratio do we use, sine, cosine, or tangent. So the English language is nice because it allows us to have this great little acronym here, SOHCAHTOA. Okay, this is a great way to remember the various trig ratio. So the first word here, so, is really saying that the sine, right, the sine is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. Second word, ka, is really saying the cosine here is equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And finally, toa, we're saying tangent, is really equal to the opposite leg divided by the adjacent leg. Okay, so the phrase SOHCAHTOA is very nice and helpful for us to remember which trig ratios to use in which circumstances. Now, let's look at the next video and work through some examples.